Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Game of Life and How to Play It. The classic text with commentary, study questions, action items, and much more. By Florence Scovel Shinn, with additional material by Gentry. Narrated by C.S.E. Cooney. Forward. Human nature and its inherited traditions have made us very serious and weighed down by our circumstances. Life would be so much more fun if we could think of it as a game. It may seem preposterous to some, but Florence Scovel Shinn knew early on the secrets that could unlock a joyful existence, one where we truly feel we are cooperating with the organizing forces of life and are able to have what we want. And now, Gentry has funneled Shinn's theories and stories into a concrete set of exercises that will help you weave her teachings deep into the fabric of your life and make them work for you. The game of life hasn't changed much, but people have evolved. I think they are now, more than ever, ready to hear what Shinn knew so many years ago. It's our most organic and essential qualities that need to be honed so life can feel like a game. As I revisited this classic book, I was struck anew by certain areas of interest that coincidentally stacked up to spell L-I-F-E: love, intuition, fear, and expectation. Love. The act of listening to this book and taking on Shinn's teachings is an act of love. To stop the torture of how you approach things now and turn your thinking over to kinder thoughts, and therefore actions, is a milestone in your spiritual growth. Operating in this way is kinder to your soul, and all those around you will benefit as well. You'll find life to be kinder when you are kinder to yourself. The voice in your head will change as you give it heed or not. Love it back and calm it. When it wants to attack others, talk it out of its meanness. Love yourself out of every problem by sending love to all those involved. Have trouble with your boss? Send them love. Arguing with your sibling? Send them love. No matter how disdainful another's actions might be, send them love. Love will ease the way. Intuition. Florence says that intuition means being taught from within. I say that intuition is the most important 21st century life skill we can nurture. We are wired to be our own rudder, but for dozens of decades we've allowed outside sources to decide our lives. In a world where the rules of work, government, religion, environment, and every system we've come to rely on are in constant flux, there is only one ruling factor to decision-making in your life: you. You may look to God or some other source for guidance, but ultimately trusting yourself, your intuition, is paramount to navigating what lies ahead. I work with people every day who are excavating their way to clarity on their career and their life path, and they often ask me if they are crazy to listen to what they want most and what their intuition is telling them. The answer, of course, is no, especially when those around them are asking if they are crazy to give up their job or consider something illogical. I tell them, if everyone thinks you're crazy, you're on the right track. Keep going. Fear. Fear is the eternal enemy to living the life we most desire. Its voice so powerful we believe it above any other authority. Shinn says, fear is inverted faith. We have faith in evil instead of good. She asks us to wish without worrying, which is essential to succeeding in the game of life. It's easy to believe and have faith for a while. However, as the days go on, and the timeline we had hoped for evaporates into an excuse to become hopeless, we are being asked to take on a whole other skill set. The belief that the universe has our back and truly wants what is good for us has to be felt with every fiber of your body and soul, the subconscious mind, according to Shinn, to succeed at the game of life. This depth of trust directly correlates to our expectations. Expectation. I was a born worrier. Maybe it's just part of being the oldest child, or maybe it's a product of a vivid imagination, but I learned to worry as a way to feel safe. Ironically, Imagining the worst-case scenario and then coming up with a solution to it enabled me to put the fear aside like an item crossed off a checklist. Done. I'm prepared, so no need to worry, I would think. Over the years, as I studied metaphysics and read books like this one, I've worked hard to stop preparing for the worst altogether and just expect the best. We are afraid to expect the best because perhaps we don't want to be naive or get caught unprepared if something bad were to happen. Maybe we even feel ashamed to think there's hubris in ignoring the pitfalls, thus my own prepare for the worst but expect the best philosophy. I've allowed that to change, and I hope you will too. As per Shinn, our words and our thoughts are only meant to heal, bless, and prosper. We are to live fully expectant of the results we desire. I've tried it, and I highly recommend it. It feels so good. It creates a high vibration in your being, and we know that is the prerequisite for a high-quality life. Being fully expectant of great things harms no one. Over all these years, the game of life hasn't changed, but this book is a game changer. Expect it to change you and your life for the best. Laura Berman Fortgang. Introduction. This edition of The Game of Life and How to Play It contains the complete and original text, exactly as it was originally published in 1925. Since its publication, it has influenced millions. Why? I believe it is because author Florence Scovel Shinn was a master at taking profound spiritual concepts and making them accessible and practical. I was first given a copy of The Game of Life by a friend who insisted this book had changed her life and that it could do the same for me. As I held that copy in my hands, I remember thinking that this slim little book seemed too simple and too short to contain any real ideas that could work for me. And I also felt that since it had been published many years before I was born, the ideas were probably outdated. However, once I began reading, I quickly changed my mind. Here was a guide to life that was easy to understand and incredibly motivating, and it contained practical ideas that I could implement immediately. And I did. The more I used the ideas in The Game of Life, the more success I had in every area. I've read this book many times over the years, and I began teaching classes on it about a decade ago. It continues to inspire me to live my life more fully and more joyfully, and I've seen firsthand how it positively and powerfully affects the lives of those in my classes. A couple quick notes before you listen to The Game of Life. It was published in 1925, before a more gender-neutral language was the norm. I've decided to keep the language as is in this edition, not wanting to change the book from the way it was originally intended by the author. However, it is not difficult to translate her message for either gender as you listen to this book. The ideas expressed may often use masculine pronouns, but the ideas themselves obviously have no gender and will work for anyone who uses them consciously. Another tip. It can be more powerful to study this book slowly, rather than give in to the temptation of listening to it all in one sitting. Despite its slender size, each chapter is packed with principles and suggestions that require more than a moment's consideration. What I do, and what I teach others to do, is listen to one chapter each week for 10 weeks. Since the chapters are short, each one can be heard from start to finish every day for a week, or divided up into small sections to listen to every day. To further help listeners, at the end of each chapter I've included reflection questions to help you digest the material and perhaps shine a light on some of the most important ideas. I've also included exercises to help you incorporate the ideas into your life immediately. After all, knowledge isn't useful unless we use it to make our lives better. You'll notice inspirational quotes appear throughout the chapters as well. This is to provide further bite-sized wisdom that can give you aha moments. Finally, the book concludes with 2 very special appendixes based on my many years of teaching this material. The first appendix contains a very simple exercise that can help you to discover and choose goals that will enhance and enlarge your life. Sometimes we can feel rudderless, not knowing where we are going. However, if we aren't moving toward anything in life, we can feel directionless and lost. When we clearly define what we want in life, we then have a North Star that we can move toward each and every day. Because I found that studying this book with another person or a small group of people is even more powerful than listening to it alone, I've included a second appendix which contains some very simple guides to forming a group. As Shinn points out, when 2 or more people come together to discover and practice these powerful principles, the results are magnified for all involved. Plus, studying with other people makes the process more fun. My final piece of advice is this. Don't just listen to this book. Devour it. Use it. Test it. Write down your favorite sentences. Write your own affirmations. In other words, make this book not just a book, but rather a guide for life. Your life. If something sounds too simple or too good to be true, try it out earnestly and wholeheartedly and see if it works for you. Enter into this book with a spirit of openness and let it take you on a very important journey. The journey to your success. Chris Gentry. The Game of Life. Most people consider life a battle, but life is not a battle. It is a game. It is a game, however, which cannot be played successfully without the knowledge of spiritual law. And the Old and the New Testaments give the rules of the game with wonderful clearness. Jesus Christ taught that it was a great game of giving and receiving. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. This means that whatever man sends out in word or deed will return to him. What he gives, he will receive. If he gives hate, he will receive hate. If he gives love, he will receive love. If he gives criticism, he will receive criticism. If he lies, he will be lied to. If he cheats, he will be cheated. We are taught also that the imaging faculty plays a leading part in the game of life. Keep thy heart, or imagination, with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. This means that what man images sooner or later externalizes in his affairs. I know of a man who feared a certain disease. It was a very rare disease and difficult to get, but he pictured it continually and read about it until it manifested in his body, and he died, the victim of distorted imagination. So we see, to play successfully the game of life, we must train the imaging faculty. A person with an imaging faculty trained to image only good brings into his life every righteous desire of his heart, health, wealth, love, friends, perfect self-expression, his highest ideals. The imagination has been called the scissors of the mind, and it is ever cutting day by day the pictures man sees there, and sooner or later he meets his own creations in his outer world. To train the imagination successfully, man must understand the workings of his mind. The Greeks said, "Know thyself." Take care of each moment, and you will take care of all time. Buddha. There are 3 departments of the mind: the subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. The subconscious is simply power without direction. It is like steam or electricity, and it does what it is directed to do. It has no power of induction. Whatever man feels deeply or images clearly is impressed upon the subconscious mind and carried out in minutest detail. For example, a woman I know, when a child, always made believe she was a widow. She dressed up in black clothes and wore a long black veil, and people thought she was very clever and amusing. She grew up and married a man with whom she was deeply in love. In a short time he died, and she wore black and a sweeping veil for many years. The picture of herself as a widow was impressed upon the subconscious mind, and in due time worked itself out, regardless of the havoc created. The conscious mind has been called mortal or carnal mind. It is the human mind and sees life as it appears to be. It sees death, disaster, sickness, poverty, and limitation of every kind, and it impresses the subconscious. The superconscious mind is the God mind within each man, and is the realm of perfect ideas. In it is the perfect pattern spoken of by Plato, the divine design, for there is a divine design for each person. There is a place that you are to fill, and no one else can fill, something you are to do which no one else can do. There is a perfect picture of this in the superconscious mind. It usually flashes across the conscious as an unattainable ideal, something too good to be true. In reality, it is man's true destiny or destination flashed to him from the infinite intelligence which is within himself. Many people, however, are in ignorance of their true destinies and are striving for things and situations which do not belong to them, and would only bring failure and dissatisfaction if attained. For example, a woman came to me and asked me to speak the word that she would marry a certain man with whom she was very much in love. She called him A.B. I replied that this would be a violation of spiritual law, but that I would speak the word for the right man, the divine selection, the man who belonged to her by divine right. I added, if A.B. is the right man, you can't lose him, and if he isn't, you will receive his equivalent. She saw A.B. frequently, but no headway was made in their friendship. One evening she called and said, "Do you know, for the last week A.B. hasn't seemed so wonderful to me." I replied, "Maybe he is not the divine selection. Another man may be the right one." Soon after that, she met another man who fell in love with her at once, and who said she was his ideal. In fact, he said all the things that she had always wished A.B. would say to her. She remarked, "It was quite uncanny." She soon returned his love, and lost all interest in A.B. This shows the law of substitution. A right idea was substituted for a wrong one, therefore there was no loss or sacrifice involved. With God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26. Jesus Christ said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." And he said the kingdom was within man. The kingdom is the realm of right ideas, or the divine pattern. Jesus Christ taught that man's words played a leading part in the game of life. By your words ye are justified, and by your words ye are condemned. Many people have brought disaster into their lives through idle words. For example, a woman once asked me why her life was now one of poverty and limitation. Formerly she had a home, was surrounded by beautiful things, and had plenty of money. We found she had often tired of the management of her home, and had said repeatedly, "I'm sick and tired of things, I wish I lived in a trunk." And she added, "Today I am living in that trunk." She had spoken herself into a trunk. The subconscious mind has no sense of humor, and people often joke themselves into unhappy experiences. For example, a woman who had a great deal of money joked continually about getting ready for the poorhouse. In a few years she was almost destitute, having impressed the subconscious mind with a picture of lack and limitation. Fortunately, the law works both ways, and a situation of lack may be changed to one of plenty. For example, a woman came to me one hot summer's day for a treatment for prosperity. She was worn out, dejected, and discouraged. She said she possessed just $8 in the world. I said, "Good. We'll bless the $8 and multiply them as Jesus Christ multiplied the loaves and fishes, for he taught that every man had the power to bless and to multiply, to heal and to prosper." She said, "What shall I do next?" I replied, "Follow intuition. Have you a hunch to do anything or to go anywhere? Intuition means intuition, or to be taught from within. It is man's unerring guide, and I will deal more fully with its laws in a following chapter. Desire is God tapping at the door of your mind, trying to give you greater good. Catherine Ponder. The woman replied, "I don't know. I seem to have a hunch to go home. I've just enough money for car fare." Her home was in a distant city and was one of lack and limitation, and the reasoning mind, or intellect, would have said, "Stay in New York and get work and make some money." I replied, "Then go home. Never violate a hunch." I spoke the following words for her: "Infinite Spirit, open the way for great abundance for fill in the blank." She is an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to her by divine right. I told her to repeat it continually also. She left for home immediately. In calling on a woman one day, she linked up with an old friend of her family. Through this friend, she received thousands of dollars in a most miraculous way. She has said to me often, "Tell people about the woman who came to you with $8 and a hunch." There is always plenty on man's pathway, but it can only be brought into manifestation through desire, faith, or the spoken word. Jesus Christ brought out clearly that man must make the first move. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7:7. In the Scriptures we read, "Concerning the works of my hands command ye me." Infinite intelligence, God, is ever ready to carry out man's smallest or greatest demands. Every desire, uttered or unexpressed, is a demand. We are often startled by having a wish suddenly fulfilled. For example, one Easter, having seen many beautiful rose trees in the florist's windows, I wished I would receive one, and for an instant saw it mentally being carried in the door. Easter came, and with it a beautiful rose tree. I thanked my friend the following day, and told her it was just what I had wanted. She replied, "I didn't send you a rose tree, I sent you lilies." The man had mixed the order, and sent me a rose tree simply because I had started the law in action, and I had to have a rose tree. Today, I recognize the abundance of life. I animate everything in my experience with this idea. Ernest Holmes. Nothing stands between man and his highest ideals and every desire of his heart, but doubt and fear. When man can wish without worrying, every desire will be instantly fulfilled. I will explain more fully in a following chapter the scientific reason for this, and how fear must be erased from the consciousness. It is man's only enemy, fear of lack, fear of failure, fear of sickness, fear of loss, and a feeling of insecurity on some plane. Jesus Christ said, "Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith?" Matthew 8:26. So we can see we must substitute faith for fear is only inverted faith. It is faith in evil instead of good. The object of the game of life is to see clearly one's good, and to obliterate all mental pictures of evil. This must be done by impressing the subconscious mind with the realization of good. A very brilliant man, who has attained great success, told me he had suddenly erased all fear from his consciousness by reading a sign which hung in a room. He saw printed in large letters this statement, "Why worry? It will probably never happen." These words were stamped indelibly upon his subconscious mind, and he has now a firm conviction that only good can come into his life, therefore only good can manifest. In the following chapter I will deal with the different methods of impressing the subconscious mind. It is man's faithful servant, but one must be careful to give it the right orders. Man has ever a silent listener at his side, his subconscious mind. Every thought, every word is impressed upon it and carried out in amazing detail. It is like a singer making a record on the sensitive disc of the phonographic plate. Every note and tone of the singer's voice is registered. If he coughs or hesitates, it is registered also. So, let us break all the old bad records in the subconscious mind, the records of our lives which we do not wish to keep, and make new and beautiful ones. Speak these words aloud with power and conviction. I now smash and demolish, by my spoken word, every untrue record in my subconscious mind. They shall return to the dust heap of their native nothingness, for they came from my own vain imaginings. I now make my perfect records through the Christ within, the records of health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. This is the square of life, the game completed. In the following chapters I will show how man can change his conditions by changing his words. Any man who does not know the power of the word is behind the times. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. Reflect. 1. If life is a great game of giving and receiving, do you think you are in balance with both giving to life and receiving from life? If not, where are you out of balance, and why? 2. Many people are in ignorance of their true destinies and are striving for things and situations which do not belong to them, and would only bring failure and dissatisfaction if attained. Have you or anyone you know had this experience? If so, what happened? 3. Which of the stories in this chapter do you relate to most? Why? What did you learn from it? Take your turn. 1. You must follow your intuition. Do you have a hunch for next steps in your life? If so, what is your hunch telling you to do? 2. Look at this hunch, and if possible, immediately take the first step toward making it happen before it loses energy. Never delay acting on a hunch until tomorrow. 3. Pick one of the affirmations or positive statements from this chapter. Write it down on a small piece of paper or sticky note, and repeat it 100 times each day for a week. Notice all the ways, big or small, your life mirrors this positive idea. The law of prosperity. Yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. One of the greatest messages given to the race through the Scriptures is that God is man's supply, and that man can release through his spoken word all that belongs to him by divine right. He must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word. Isaiah said, My word shall not return unto me void, but shall accomplish that whereunto it is sent. We know now that words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force, ever molding man's body and affairs. A woman came to me in great distress and said she was to be sued on the 15th of the month for $3,000. She knew no way of getting the money and was in despair. I told her God was her supply and that there is a supply for every demand. So I spoke the word. I gave thanks that the woman would receive $3,000 at the right time in the right way. I told her she must have perfect faith and act her perfect faith. The 15th came, but no money had materialized. She called me on the phone and asked what she was to do. I replied, It is Saturday, so they won't sue you today. Your part is to act rich, thereby showing perfect faith that you will receive it by Monday. She asked me to lunch with her to keep up her courage. When I joined her at a restaurant, I said, This is no time to economize. Order an expensive luncheon. Act as if you have already received the $3,000. All things whatsoever ye ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive. You must act as if you had already received. The next morning she called me on the phone and asked me to stay with her during the day. I said no. You are divinely protected and God is never too late. In the evening she phoned again, greatly excited, and said, My dear, a miracle has happened. I was sitting in my room this morning when the doorbell rang. I said to the maid, Don't let anyone in. The maid, however, looked out the window and said, It's your cousin with the long white beard. So I said, Call him back, I would like to see him. He was just turning the corner when he heard the maid's voice, and he came back. He talked for about an hour, and just as he was leaving, he said, Oh, by the way, how are finances? I told him I needed money, and he said, Why, my dear, I will give you $3,000 the first of the month. I didn't like to tell him I was going to be sued. What shall I do? I won't receive it till the first of the month, and I must have it tomorrow. I said, I'll keep on treating. I said, Spirit is never too late. I give thanks she has received the money on the invisible plane, and that it manifests on time. The next morning her cousin called her up and said, Come to my office this morning, and I will give you the money. That afternoon she had $3,000 to her credit in the bank, and wrote checks as rapidly as her excitement would permit. I do everything with a sense of reliance upon the law of good. Therefore I know that my word shall not return unto me void. Ernest Holmes. If one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get the situation he has prepared for. For example, a man came to me, asking me to speak the word that a certain debt would be wiped out. I found he spent his time planning what he would say to the men when he did not pay his bill, thereby neutralizing my words. He should have seen himself paying the debt. We have a wonderful illustration of this in the Bible, relating to the 3 kings who were in the desert without water for their men and horses. They consulted the prophet Elisha, who gave them this astonishing message. Thus saith the Lord, Ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches. Man must prepare for the thing he has asked for when there isn't the slightest sign of it in sight. For example, A woman found it necessary to look for an apartment during the year when there was a great shortage of apartments in New York. It was considered almost an impossibility, and her friends were sorry for her and said, "Isn't it too bad? You'll have to store your furniture and live in a hotel."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?